Howdy again. It's tubalcain, and I'm standing in front of my Logan 10-inch lathe Powercraft Monkey Wards, and I'd like to thank KBC Tools for becoming one of my sponsors. So you'll be hearing more about KBC Tools, so take a look at their website if you would. But in a recent series of videos, and that was number 402 and 403, I made a part for this Logan lathe for the taper attachment. So I had made a pattern and the casting and spent really 4 days on it, which was 4 days wasted out of my life, because shortly after this video was published I heard from John Kraft in Jacksonville, Florida, and he said, you know, I have that missing part for your lathe. I always wondered what it was. It came in an auction box, and it's exactly what you need, I believe. So he spent considerable money sending that up, probably 20 bucks UPS, and it's here, packed very well, and we're going to install that in a few minutes. Was all the time wasted? Well, maybe not, because in fact I have 2 Logan lathes, as you well know, and watch for those Logan videos that are coming out after the New Year. There'll be a series, a course on Vimeo entitled How to Run a Logan Lathe. So join me here as we disassemble this part and install John Kraft's original equipment part for the Logan. Alright, here's what John sent from Florida, and he didn't have the complete unit either. The parts that clamp onto the bed are not here. So we got that, but this is what I really need, and it is a complete piece. You see, it's the entire cross slide, and on these dovetails the compound is mounted. And flipping it over now, he sent 2 gibs. You can see that this is the dovetail that fits onto the machine. And I had several comments of people saying, you don't need the dovetail that you put on here, and this does not have it. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but this very long piece is extremely rigid. This is cast iron, where my aluminum one really I had no good way of fastening that onto the cross slide other than a couple screws. It couldn't be mounted this way, so I couldn't have it tilt like this. This is extremely rigid, because remember, this is turning your lathe into a copy machine. Quite good condition. It needs a good cleaning up. However, it's got the usual little damage right here from a chuck, but that shouldn't bother me at all. Now this needs a good cleaning up. Not real bad, and the paint's in good condition, but the gibs are a bit rusty. So I'll clean up the gibs and take the rust off of this, and maybe use a Scotch-Brite or something like that, and I'm going to do that all off camera. So I'll be back with you in about a half hour. I am now 30 minutes older than I was last time I spoke to you, and I've got this all cleaned up real nice. And you know, I dug through my wife's linen closet and got this brown guest towel because it's color coordinated with my Scotch-Brite, and you might remember when I bought this for 2 or 3 bucks recently at an auction. And let me say one other thing. I told you John sent this from Jacksonville, Florida. Well, 2 days after John contacted me, and he already gave me a UPS confirming number, tracking number, I received another email from a man out west, and he said, you know why you're missing that part? I'm thinking, no, why? He said, because it's here in my shop in Omaha, Nebraska. Do you want me to send it to you? So apparently he had one just like this too, and was willing to send it to me. So I'm still amazed at the generosity of people and how these YouTube videos connect me and probably thousands of other people with other creators. And you know, YouTube has changed my life, and I've met the most wonderful people. Getting off topic again here, but I've got this all taken apart, cleaned up, and it did clean up very nicely with a little emery cloth and thinner and Scotch-Brite. Now there were 2 gibs. This one is badly damaged and it is bent, and I'm wondering but no problem because I got a good one here. Now the way that the compound is attached here, and there's a round dovetail, is considerably different than the Logan that I'm going to work on here in a moment. So this reminds me of a South Bend or an Atlas. I forgot which one. You know, one has a dovetail like this on the cross slide. So those two, never mind. So anyway, there's little inserts in here, very similar to the way Atlas does it, and dog point screws. And since this is different than the other one, which has bolts here, I'm hoping this fits. Although this appears to be the right size. I checked it with a calipers, and I checked this, so I believe it's the right size and it's going to work. The world's favorite oil can, an Eagle 66. I don't think they make them anymore. They make a cheap plastic one that comes from China. You need to oil everything when you assemble it. You knew that. And squeaky clean. You know, I found some green paint on this, so at one time this lathe apparently was green. Bondus, ball end hex keys. You gotta love them. Alright, let's go over to the Logan. First off comes the compound. I've loosened the two nuts, and you can see that that's constructed differently than the new one. You will remember this is the original chip guard, and this is the part that I made with the dovetail, and I'm going to slide it off, and that is where I received the criticism that the dovetail was not necessary. It could have just been clearance of some kind, but it had to be fastened securely here, but there really was no room to fasten it down here, or no good way of doing that. So that was my way of doing it, and since I don't think out of the box, that never occurred to me to start with. So off comes the cross slide, and I will have to use this nut and screw, for that matter. That nut holds the cross slide onto the brass nut. You knew that. And I already loosened the gibs a little bit in order to get that off. This was just off, so it's not very dirty. As I was making my videos for the series, the Logan series. There. Got to put the gib in there. Where's that? Where did I put it? I installed the screw here that screws right into the brass nut. But remember, that screw has to be removed when I actually use the unit. It has to be free of the crank. You knew that. Now, as I adjust the gibs, a thought occurred to me that on these Logans there isn't any way to keep the gib in place. And you know, this one is absolutely mutilated, and apparently every time they put it in it was a little bit different, but it really needs a pin to hold it in place. as I showed you recently, or little pockets so that this cannot reposition itself. And I will do that later off camera. That isn't the purpose of this video, but I am snugging up the gibs right now. Actually, I've already done that. So now let's see if the compound fits. And yes, the compound's going to fit fine. I had to take this all apart and remove this again. Good fit when I put the gib in. Now this gib has that little hole for the pin that I talked about. I will have to make a modification down here, really when I'm done with the video. But if you look right here, where is it? There's a little pin that goes into this hole, and there you can see it from the outside. I hadn't disassembled a Logan compound in a long time, and I must confess it's a bit tricky, but I didn't want to get into that because that's not the purpose of this video. This is the old one, and you can see that it is built quite a bit different, again with the two bolts, little T-bolts going in there, and I transferred my compound onto this piece that came from John. Now I'm ready to put this back on. Remember, I had it off. I had it on, then I had it off. All nice and clean. I don't think this had ever been apart because it was pretty gunky in there. Not a lot of chips, but nevertheless. So that'll go on like that. And tighten these two screws kind of like, I guess, south bend more or less. Down at this end, a bolt goes in there, but I need to make a spacer washer that'll go in here because you can see that the way of checking it is with the Starrett. You could use feeler gauges or drill bits or just anyway, but this is a Starrett taper gauge. You've seen me use it, so before. I'm looking at the number there, so that spacer needs to be about 95 thousandths. In other words, a washer under there that is 95 thousandths, and I'll make one off camera. Well, I went over to my washer drawer and I thought, well, there's a 3/8 washer. I wonder how thick that is. So, as Providence would have it, 92.5 thousandths. I think that's going to do the job without any machining. So see, that lays right on there as such. Fits in there barely, just barely. So that's, boy, that's a good fit. Boy, that usually doesn't happen to me. And I already checked this bolt so that when I tighten it, it doesn't bind against the guide bar back here. So in that goes. Remember, I am now turning this lathe into a copy lathe, a contour lathe, although this isn't a contour, it's straight line. We need a little oil back there. Now, someone told me in the comments that I had this on backwards and the gib should be out toward the front. Well, I don't know. I really don't know. Now, it's totally useless until I remove this bolt that connects it again to the brass nut and disable this. In other words, this has got to spin free. So, I'll take the brass nut screw out quickly. And you should always put a piece of tape or something over there so you don't get shavings down into that thread in the brass nut. Now, that's disabled. So with this bolt loose, see, this slides back and forth, and then you would put it in whatever approximate position you needed with your tool post and your tool in relationship to the work and so on, and then tighten the, I'm going to call it the binding screw, I like that word. I have the bar here set to a rather steep angle, approximately, I can't read it from there, doesn't matter. But when I tighten that, that's causing the entire cross slide to move, in this case, either in or out. If you look right down here now, as I advance the carriage, everybody probably knows this, I don't know why I'm telling you, it's beyond the scope of what I wanted to show you here, but watch the cross slide move. You see it moving? Or not? Because it's copying the angle of the guide bar. Check out kbctools.com. All metal all the time. They got a 900-page catalog plus an online catalog. I think you'll like it. And that about completes this video, and I thank John ever so much for sending me that, and it did fit, and so the man in Omaha does not need to send it to me. And then the other unit that I wasted all that time out of my life on will go on the Model 820, which is out in the cold garage. I hope you liked this rather long video. This is tubalcain signing out for now, saying so long for now, and I'll see you, I hope, in my next shop video.